It's Brad. I have a cool project to show you today. We are going to use Floriani Total Control U to digitize stump work, which is a type of embroidery where you're using wire to create a posable 3D object. So check out what I have to show you. So this is my 3D stump work flower. It's not the prettiest flower in the whole world because my fabric that I used here, I didn't cut it exactly right, but that's okay. This illustrates the concept very well. We've got these petals that we can move. They're bendable because they have wire going through them. So I'm going to teach you how to digitize this entire design and how to sew out over the wire, which is pretty scary until you do it a couple of times. It's really not that bad. Yeah, so here is our project. This is what we're going to be creating. So let's go to the software now and let me show you how to do it.
Okay, so the first thing we need is a shape to trace to get the form of our flower, our poinsettia, that we're going to create. And so what we can do is just what I did anyway to find it is went to Google. So just open up your web browser, go to Google, type in poinsettia pattern, and then click on images for poinsettia pattern, or you can click on images right here. And the one that I used, and any of these could work potentially for doing this technique. So you can always look at all these different shapes and pick one that you would rather do. But this is the one that I used. I used to use this as a template. So you're going to click on it, right click, and then choose Save Image As. Put it somewhere that you know where it is. I already have it, obviously. So you save that, and this specific one is the one that I used. So I'll get rid of that. So to bring it into your software, you are going to click on the backdrop tool. That's this one with the little mountain scene. Left click on that, and then navigate to wherever you saved it to, which is what was it called? It was called Sparkling something. Here it is. Sparkling Poinsettia template. Okay, so pick one of these to trace. I'm going to do this one right here is the one I'm going to do. And to trace it, what I'm going to use is the line tool, which is this one. It looks like a barbell. I'm going to left click on that. And then I'm just going to start right here with a left click. I can zoom in a little bit by using my mouse wheel. And then I'm going to click here. And I'm going to start holding the control key down, which is going to give me a curve. And then I'm going to get to about here and then let off the control key, make a nice sharp point there, click one more time, and then hold down the control key again to continue drawing my curve. And then I'm going to get to right here where the last click would be. Instead of clicking to the first click, I'm going to go up and use this close shape tool. Left click on that, closes my shape. Okay, that's all I need from this image. I'm going to just get rid of it now. So we're going to left click on our backdrop, and then right click and then click on show backdrop will make it go away, and we have just our single element that we drew. So we're going to left click on that to select it, and I want to smooth these points out a little bit and make them a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to go to my shape tool, which is this one, the third one down on the left. Here I can adjust these nodes. That's what these guys are, nodes, and make my curve a little smoother. I can delete unnecessary points if I want to. Like if I'm like looking at it and I realize, man, I got too many points in there. But you can bend and move and push the points around. Like here, I can get rid of this one probably, and then I can, adjust the curve however I want. So you get it till you think it's perfect. And then we are going to take this and select it. And what we got to do is put this. We're going to use the circle template up here to make a flower out of this. So we're going to left click on the circle template, and then we can see that it has by default it has 6 repeats, which is how many I'm going to do. That's 6 count. And what we need to do is change the angle here from 0 to 90. So we're going to type in 90 and hit apply. You can see that it now has them radiating out from one another. And then the next thing we're going to do is use the circle dimensions. Just hold down on it until they kind of are running into each other and overlapping each other. About like this. Okay, so this is what we want to see. and it can be more or less than 38 millimeters. You set it to whatever you want, and then we're going to hit OK. Now it's got them placed in this particular fashion. So now I want to size them, and the size that I want them to fit within the Baby Lock 9.5 by 9.5 hoop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and make sure that my grid is set in imperial so that I can do it in inches. And then with everything selected, so if it's not selected, just click on all items to select everything. Go to transform. We're going to set why is this in, here we go, switch that to inches. So we're going to set that to inches, and we're going to set our width to 9. Okay, so it's going to be 9 inches wide. That'll fit in my 9.5 by 9.5 hoop with a little bit of room to spare. Hit apply. It'll size the entire thing up. We'll just go ahead and zoom out a little bit so that excuse me, so that we can see the whole thing. And now what we want to do is, before the next step, we want to take one of our petals. See, they're all still separate. We want to take one of them and copy it. So we're going to right click, copy. Then you're going to go up and create a new page right here, this little blue folded piece of paper, and then right click and paste one of those into another design. Okay, so I've got design 1 and design 2. Then we go back to design 1. We're going to select everything, Control A. Then we're going to right click under transform artwork. We're going to choose weld, and that gives us just this outer outline shape, and that's what we want for this part of the design. And then we're going to change this to an applique. So we left click on applique down here. All right, and we can adjust our stitch width over here if we want. We can set this to be higher or lower. We could also, instead of doing it as a satin, we could do it as a blanket stitch if we wanted to. It's up to you. And so let's see, say I want to increase my stitch width, make it like 4. Boom, I've got wider stitches. Okay, and then the last thing for our design for the base of our flower is going to be, we need a circle. So we draw an ellipse, just click and drag, and you want it to be pretty much a perfect circle. If it's not, if you can't draw a perfect circle, you could go up to transform and see, I got it pretty close, like 1.89 by 1.9, but if you wanted to, you could uncheck maintain aspect ratio here, and then make it so that it is exactly something by something. Hit apply. You want it to be probably 2.5 is probably going to be good. There. Oh, got to do it for both because I turned off maintain aspect ratio. There we go. Okay, very good. So that we need to make an applique also. And I want it, instead of being a satin, I want it to be a blanket. So what this is going to do is it's going to hold down our 3D petals that we make. So this is going to be sewing over wire. That's why I made this a blanket stitch instead of a satin stitch. So it's less chance for the needle to hit the wire because it's not making as dense of a stitch. Okay, so this part's done. We're going to save it. File, save as. I'm going to save mine as poinsettia base. We're going to save it as a PES so I can sew it out, but if you're doing this yourself, you also want to save it as a WAF so you can go back and edit it if you need to. Okay, so that's the base. That's the base design. When we go to sew this out, it's going to act just like a normal applique for the green line. It'll put down a running stitch for your placement so that you know where to put your fabric, and then you put your applique fabric down. It's going to sew out another run stitch around here. We're going to trim the excess fabric, and then it'll go and put a satin stitch down around it to finish the edge. And then after that, we're going to place our 3D petals that we're going to sew out, which is what we're going to digitize next. But we will have already sewed out our 3D petals and have them ready. And we lay them down in the hoop on top of this applique, and then the second applique that we digitized gets sewn out on top of those, and that's what holds them to the flower. That's what's going to make everything hold together, is this applique blanket stitch that we put down. If you can't visualize how it's going to work, I'm going to show it all on video, me making it. So don't worry too much if you're not getting what I'm saying here. But that is how that works. So The next thing we need to do is to digitize our petals, our 3D petals. So remember that we copied and pasted one copy of these petals before we welded them, and it is in this second design here. So click on that. Now, the way that you have to do this is a little bit, it's a little tricky. So you might have to go back and watch to see exactly what I did. But in order for this to work, we need this to be 3 separate lines. Okay, we need to have we need to have 3 lines that are kind of equally spaced apart from one another. And the way that we're going to create those lines is with this tool right here. Hover the mouse over it. It says Create Outlines. I need to have one outline that is 3 millimeters wider than this outline, so larger all the way around. So I'm going to set my spacing. I'm going to set my ripples to 1, my spacing to 3. Well, I need one that's 1.5. I need one that's 3, so I could do either way. And incidentally, if your spacing is not set here to metric, you need to change that. If this says inches, you need to go in up to your ruler, right click, and change it from imperial to metric, because this has to be done in metric. Anyway, okay, so create outlines. I'm going to set the spacing for one of them to 3 and hit OK. That generates another line. And then I go back to the first one, which is this one right here, the first one in the order. And then I am going to create outlines on it again, and this time choose 1.5 and hit OK. So now we've got 3 lines. They're all equally spaced to one another, and this is what's going to create our 3D petal. So the way that it's going to work is it's going to sew out a running stitch and then another running stitch. So the first run stitch is your placement line, and we're going to put our fabric over that, and then we're also putting a piece of fabric under it. We're going to put a piece of fabric under so that our 3D leaves are two-sided, and you'll see me doing that in the video. Then it's going to sew out a loose zigzag stitch, which is what's actually going to hold our wire down, and then we're also going to need a fat satin stitch to go down on top of that. So how are we going to get all of that out of these 3 lines? Well, let's look at our lines. We've got our first line is the original shape, so that's the smallest one. Our second line is the biggest one, that's the one on the outside here, and then our third line is the one in the middle. So the one in the middle is going to be the line that we use for the placement and for the line that's going to be the satin stitches. They call them steel stitches in this program. The steel stitch that is both the loose zigzag and the satin. So we're going to use that line for both of those things. Well, all 3 of those things. And then these 2 are going to be a guideline that's going to sew out and show us exactly where we can put the wire while we're guiding it, and the zigzag stitch is holding it down. Again, you'll see this stuff in the video, but let's just go ahead and start doing it. So I want these 2 are going to be the same color, okay, because I want them to sew out together. So I'm going to make them something that I'll notice. Here, let's set this to embroidery so I have less color. So I'll make these orange. Okay, so these guys we're going to leave alone. They're going to be orange, and they're going to be a running stitch. So down in the corner here, we'll hit run. Okay, so I've got my run stitches, and then this guy I need a bunch of different copies of. I need at least 4 of them. So we're going to hit Control C and then Control V. 3, 4. So we've got 4, and that is the center line that we have. Okay. So we want the first 2 of these are going to sew out first in our design. So we need to select 2 of these. So hold down your Control key and click on 2 of these, and then right click them and choose Move First, which is, you can't see it. All right, we'll right click Move First. Okay, it doesn't matter where you right click as long as they're selected over here. That puts these 2 things to sew out first, and then they both need to be running stitches, and they need to be different colors so that the machine stops between the colors. Okay, it doesn't matter what the colors are. We're going to use the same thread for all of this, but we need them to be different colors in the design so that the machine stops between colors. Okay, so we've got our first run stitch. That's a placement stitch. Our second run stitch is a tack down stitch. After it sews out the tack down, I'm going to stop and trim the excess fabric away, and you'll see that in my video. And then it's going to put down our guide stitch. Okay, and that is where we got to make sure we keep the wire between those stitches as it sews out. So the next one we need is the loose zigzag stitch. So we're going to select the first one that's still artwork, and we're going to go down here and choose steel. Then I want you to set the width of this to 3 and the density to 2, not 0.2, 2, and then hit apply. We want to not have any underlay. By default, there's not underlay, but I always just check and make sure. No underlay. So density is on 2, width is on 3, and that is our nice loose zigzag. That's going to hold down our wire. And then the finishing stitch is going to be a steel. Again, we're going to set the width of this one to 4, and we're going to leave the steel density at 0.5. Okay, and this has to be a different color than this so that it stops automatically. And so I'm going to make that red, and that's it. That is my 3D design. Okay, so if you don't get why it all has to be this way, and let's take a look at our sequence view. We have it's okay if you don't get why it has to be that way. You'll see in the video. We've got 1 run, 2 runs that are here. We can actually watch it sew out. First color, the machine will stop. We put our fabric in place, top and bottom. Tacks it down. We're going to stop and trim away the excess. It puts down our guide stitches. That's where we make sure we keep the wire between those stitches. Then it sews out our steel stitch. Then it sews out our finishing stitch. And I just noticed something that I forgot to do, which is we have to set the start and the stop points for the zigzag steel stitch. So the one that the steel density is at 2, we need to go over to our shape tool here and move the start and the stop so that they are both on one of these corners. So we're going to grab the green dot when we have the shape tool selected and drag it to the corner, and then grab the red dot. There we go. That way the ends of our wire are going to be at the end of the zigzag stitch. Okay, so that's just the one that we need to adjust the start and stop point for. That's the one that we set the steel density to 2. But once you have this done, you can go and save it. File, save as. We'll save it as pedal.pes, and then you also want to save one as a WAF file so that you can go back and edit it later. And anyone who has a cameo cutter that maybe wants to not have to trim the fabric yourself, if you know what I'm talking about there, if you have a cameo cutter or a Brother Scan and Cut or whatever, most of them can use an SVG file to cut from. So if you want to export the SVG, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just ignore this. If you want to export the SVG for a cut file, the one you want to use is this one. One of the center line ones is what you want to use. Now we have this saved, so we can safely take one of these and convert it back to artwork just for a moment, and then we can take that and go to File and Export Artwork, save it as a SVG. We'll save that as pedal.svg. That we can import into our cameo cutter or whatever you use. And you could do the same thing for this one. You just have to convert it back to artwork. So we already have this design saved, so we can safely convert this back to artwork. Just the outer part, File, Export Artwork, save it as an SVG, flower, whatever. And then we could do the same thing for the one for the blanket stitch. We convert that to artwork and export it if we wanted to. So anyway, now let's see how to sew out our design. We're going to sew out our petals first, and then we're going to work on sewing out the entire design all together. So I'll see you when I get back to the sewing machine.
Okay, so to get started sewing out your petals for your poinsettia, you want to hoop some stabilizer. You don't want to have just the stabilizer hooped. You don't want to have any fabric in this hoop at all because of the way we're going to be making these things. And for stabilizer, I am using a stiff tearaway. You could use also a like a heat away or a wash away stabilizer if you want to have the edges of your petals be as pretty as possible. I'm just using this tearaway because that's what I had laying around. So get your fabric, get your stabilizer hooped, put it in the machine, bring up the design, and you're going to proceed to sew out the first color in the design, which is going to be our placement stitch. So we'll go ahead and let this sew out. Okay, so now we know where our fabric has to be covering, so we're going to get our first piece of fabric, which I've cut down to a manageable size, and I'm going to put it underneath of the hoop so that I can make sure that I get it completely underneath of the line here. And then I'm going to take another piece of the same material and put it on top so that it completely covers the placement stitch. Got a stray fiber on it there. There we go. Okay, so now I've got my top and my bottom fabric on. I'm going to go ahead and sew out the next color, which is the tack down position, which is going to allow me to trim the excess fabric away. So we're going to let this run out. Okay, once this one's done, we'll take our hoop out from our machine. We're going to get our applique scissors and trim the excess fabric. Now, if you are a super genius and you decided to cut your fabric out with the Cameo cutter or a scan and cut or whatever kind of cutter you have, then you would be avoiding this step. It's not too bad on these though, it's pretty simple shape. So you're going to cut this away from both the top and from the back. Okay, so I'm just using these nice applique scissors. They have this nice bend to them. Lets me get really close. If you don't have applique scissors and you're cutting out appliques in embroidery, then you need to buy some applique scissors because it makes it a whole lot easier to get really close to the edge. Okay, that's my top, and now I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. You may be able to see the stitches on here are white. I didn't put a red bobbin in. You could certainly do that so that all your thread matches. I didn't bother to do it. If you are going to do that, make sure you use a 60 weight thread in your bobbin if you're using a baby lock. It will make it work a little bit better. Almost done here. There we go. And I've got a little bit here that didn't quite get cut as much as I wanted. Okay, so now I've got my fabric ready to go. We're going to put the hoop back on the machine and then proceed to sew out the next color. This next color is our guide. It's where we're going to keep, it's going to put out two straight stitches that are 2 millimeters apart, and what we're going to use them for is as a guide. We got to keep the wire, once we start putting wire in this, we have to keep the wire inside of these lines that it's sewing out right now so that the needle doesn't strike it. So that's going to be the next step, is putting in the wire, which is always a harrowing experience when you're using a, like a $15,000 machine and you're going to sew on some metal. But it's really not that bad. It's not going to break the machine. Even if worst case scenario, you'll break a needle. And it won't hurt the machine though, trust me. So I'm just letting this finish and sew out, and then we're going to start talking about the wire. Okay, now the wire that I've been using is this 24 gauge wire I got from Michaels. I mean, it's a ton of it. You know, I'm not sure just how thick a wire you could get up to, but I chose 24 gauge, and it seems to be working pretty well for me. So that is what I would recommend you get if you want it to definitely work. So what I've got here is I've got a piece of wire that I've already kind of unwound a little bit so that it's not, let's see if I can get it in the camera, so that it's not too coiled up. I just kind of stretched it out a bit. So what we're going to do, let me adjust the camera here. What we're going to do, we have to make sure that we set the machine to sew as slowly as possible, okay, which on most of these machines is 350 stitches per minute, which is still pretty fast. So anytime you start to panic, just hit the stop button. It'll stop the machine and you can readjust your wire. But what I've been doing is I've been going two different ways with this, and I'm starting to go with one over the other. You can either start the machine going so that it does its tie-in. I'm going to put my foot down. I can start the machine going and let it do its tie-in. 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Now it's going to start doing my zigzag. And then from there I'll stop it and place my wire. I'm going to pre-bend it a little bit. And I'm going to place my wire right in place. It doesn't matter what's going on all the way back here because it's going to take a while to get down there. So what I want is for it to be right between the lines, and I can see the lines. You probably can't see the lines from the camera, but I can see them pretty clearly here. And we just want to get it started. We're going to hit start again. Oh, helps if you don't bump the wire out of your own hand. We're going to get it started. Okay, now I'm going to stop and I'm going to work my way forward and make sure that the wire is underneath of the few stitches that I've got. And I've got it under there. Now I'm going to hit the start button again. Try and keep my hands out of the way. Hit the start button again and take a few more steps. Notice how it goes slow at first. So if you want to, what you can do is have it take a few stitches slow and then stop once it speeds up and then start it back up. And then just do that over and over again if you're not comfortable going full speed. Now I've been letting it go full speed for a while and then stopping and readjusting is how I've been doing this. Hopefully my hand's not in the way. I can't really see the camera. Try not to run over your hands while you do this. I'm just gently guiding the wire. And we're going to get to the end here and stop. When you get to the corner, now here's where I'm definitely going to block the camera a bit because I have to move my hand over here. So maybe I'll move my camera a little. So once I get to the end here, I'm going to bend this wire around. I'm going to bend this wire around the back like this. Not pulling hard, and I'm not trying to make a sharp point. I'm just bending it back gently. Now I'm going to hit start over here and let it come around the corner, and then I'm going to stop it again. Okay, I've stopped it again, and I'm getting my wire so that it's in between my guidelines. It's a lot easier if you're not trying to make considerations for a camera. Alright, I'm going to stop it, readjust. And every time you stop it, remember, it takes the first like 10 or so stitches really slow. So, you know, if you're nervous, just keep stopping and starting. Anytime you think, oh, I'm not sure if I have it right, just hit that stop button. Alright, so we're going to keep going. You want to make sure you don't pull on the wire either. You know, not hard. I'm just gently guiding where it's going. Here we go, we get to the end. You hear that? That was a needle strike. Didn't hurt anything. I'm gonna want to change this needle after I'm done this. No problem though. Okay, so the next thing is we need to get a pair of nippers. I have these diagonal cutters that I'm using. If you don't have a pair of diagonal cutters like this, just use a pair of nail clippers. Works perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off of here a little bit so that I can get to it, and I'm just going to trim the ends of my wire. There. And this little part that's poking out. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's like a little nub. Let's see if I get the camera to focus. There's like a little nub there at the tip I want to get rid of. Okay. Wonderful. I'm going to put it back in. And we're going to let it do the satin stitch. Okay, so now I've got my my wire sewn into my pedal. So I'm using tearaway, so I can just push on this and go ahead and pull it out of free from the stabilizer. It's posable now, like Gumby. So if you're using a heat away, the advantage is when you heat it. Hear how crinkly that is because I'm using this cheap tearaway. Or a wash away, you know, it'll wash out. So what I'm going to do is take some scissors and just trim the little fuzzies from the outside of this thing. I get little fuzzies from my tearaway. And there's some extra thread there in a couple of spots. Good enough for me. And as you can see, I've made a bunch of these. So I need one more because I'm going to do it with 6. You can kind of do it with however many you want though. I mean, you just are kind of building a flower with however many petals you want, right? And then you'll be able to pose them with where they're going to go. So, I mean, that's the whole idea. But that's how you sew out the individual petals. So it's not that bad. You just got to get over thinking you're going to break the machine, which, like I said, worst case scenario, you're going to break your needle. That said, do change your needle after you do this. Okay, now I'm ready to sew out my my applique base. So this is the one that we use the weld function to create. And the first stitch is going to be just the placement stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the start button. And it's going to sew out our placement stitch for us. Wonderful. We're going to take our applique material and just lay it in the hoop on top of the placement stitch. And if your fabric is pretty close, you want to make sure that it is covering the entire thing. Of course, if you're using a cameo cutter or a scan and cut or something like that, and you exported the SVG outline of this thing, then you'll have one that's exactly the right size. You won't have to worry about it. But I didn't, so we'll let it tack it down. Wonderful. Now we're ready to go ahead and use our applique scissors to cut this this thing out. It's always easier to take it off of the machine when you do this. At least I don't have to do both sides, huh? Yeah, this is why having a Cameo cutter or a Sizzix or a Scan and Cut or whatever is really a good investment. Because if I had to do a bunch of these, forget it. I always find it easier to cut from right to left. That's why I'm just rotating it every time. Ooh, that's ugly right there. Well, I never said I was a good fabric trimmer. Probably could have set the stitch width on this applique a little bit wider, because I think some of these parts where I'm not trimming it totally close, the fabric's going to poke through the stitches a little bit, but that's okay. This is really kind of a proof of concept more than anything else, since I think it'll all work. Everything so far has worked the way that I thought it should, but I'll see how it looks when I'm done here. Last cut. Lovely. Okay, we stick it back in the machine. All right. Sew out the last color. Okay, so it has sewn out. My applique is finished, and what I did is I arranged my petals on top of it. So I'm taking it so that each petal is in one of these gaps, where gaps between the petals on the applique that's appliqued to the fabric. So I've got all these petals are now in here, and they are going to be caught by our circle that we put in our applique. Okay, so it's going to be caught by the running stitch circle. So what I want to do is I want to take my yellow fabric. Well, actually, no. What I want to do is I want to get some KK2000 or whatever basting adhesive you use, and spray a little bit on the end of each one of these petals so that they stay in place where I put them. I'm going to go grab some. Alright, so each one of these guys, I'm going to give a little bit of spray. then stick them in there so that they stay where I put them. And I can have them overlap each other a little bit. Okay. Actually, I'm going to try to not have them overlap, and that's kind of thick. Okay. All right. Now we made our circle big enough that it's gonna cover part of each of these for sure. But if I want to be totally sure, and I have a Destiny or an Alissimo or the Brother equivalents, I can actually go in and capture the background, which is what I'm going to do to make totally sure. Make sure our leaves are down, or our petals are flat rather, and I'm going to touch the scan button. I'm actually going to scan this and make sure that that center is going to cover all of these. I should be able to see on here. Yep, that's going to catch all of it. I could move it up a little bit. I'm not going for 1000% perfect here. All right, now I just got to get my my material that I'm going to use for the center, and then I'll be ready to sew. Found this nice yellow material. I'm going to put it over top like that, and I think I'm actually going to raise the height of my presser foot also. It's making me nervous how low that is. What you do to do that is you go into your settings menu, and somewhere one of the settings is going to be embroidery foot height. I'm going to set it to 3 millimeters, which is about twice what the default is. Oh, that is way higher than I thought it was going to be, actually. Well, we'll see. Oh, I forgot to change my thread. You idiot. Change your thread color to yellow. All right. Now, I did this as a blanket stitch because I was worried about the density of a satin stitch going on top of all these wires. I don't know whether it would work or not to use a satin stitch on this. It seems like it might be too dense, but I don't know. I was just nervous to try it. I think the blanket stitch is going to work though and look okay. Yeah, really should have taken this off the hoop, or off the machine. I'm not sure why I decided to do it that way, because my edges are pretty raw. Probably because it's so late and I've been here all day. Okay, so the next thing, we're just going to go ahead and run out that final top stitch, the blanket stitch on here, and hope that everything continues to work well. In retrospect, I probably would have set the stitch length a little bit longer if I'd been thinking about it. can hear it making noises in there. It's gonna strike that wire every now and again. Like I said, the worst thing that's likely to happen though is the needle break. Not probably gonna hurt the machine. I mean, it's not gonna hurt the machine. I shouldn't say probably. Okay. We got the center of our flower. Yep. Definitely should have used a Cameo cutter to cut that shape out, because look how rough the edges are. But the theory is sound. It does indeed work. We've got a stump work flower. It's 3D, and we can pose the petals. Look how cool that is. And it was really pretty easy. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.